Hey guys, so in this video I wanted to cover some stuff about light and shadow, painting light and shadow, and some stuff about values. And I've already done a video on this before, but I just wanted to go over it again because I feel like I could possibly explain things a little bit better. I'm probably going to split this video up into two separate parts, so two different videos, just because I already tried recording everything in one go and the recording was like an hour long, so I just think it would be easier to split it up into two separate videos. So in this video I'm probably going to do like an overall demonstration of just the steps that I tend to take, and in the next video I'll probably go into a bit more detail explaining how some of the things work and just going a bit more in depth. So to start off with, let's create 3 shapes. Actually, let me just put background here. So to start off with, I'm gonna want to select the local value of the object that I'm painting. So in this case, I'm just gonna make it, or make them, just like this light gray color. So this is pretty much always the first step, to select the value or the color that you want the object to be. The next step would be to select the shadow color. So when I select the shadow color, what I usually do is I take this local value and I'll just select the color that's halfway between that and black. So in this case it will be somewhere around here. One thing I tend to see some people do is that they'll make the shadow color not dark enough. So maybe they'll make the shadow color something like this. And what this basically does is it makes it really difficult to tell the difference between the shadow and the light values. So if we get a quick grayscale up here. Right, so what this is doing essentially is you've selected a light value, like the local values like here, and here for the shadow value. If it's too bright, then it'll be somewhere around here. Basically you've left like this whole portion of the value range like unexplored, and you want to try and use as much of this as you can. So you want to kind of keep the contrast. What we've also end up doing here is you limit the light value range to just this portion of the grayscale, so you're not really going to get much value range when you start to add other details. So you kind of want to try and keep that contrast between the light and the shadow, just so you can tell the difference. So you want to select like maybe a bit darker than halfway, something like here for your shadow value. I'll do another example of that halfway to black system with the darker gray value. If I was just to maybe select like this now as the local value for the shadow tone, I'd select somewhere that's halfway between this value and black, so it'll be somewhere around here, maybe a bit darker, something like this. So that would be our new shadow value if I was to use a darker gray, but for this video I'm going to use just like this kind of almost white light gray, just because it's easier to see the difference between the light and the shadow values. So with that, what you want to do is pretty much just map out, or what I usually do at least, is just map out the main areas of light and shadow with just these two base values. So essentially what it is everything that's facing towards the light source will be in light, and everything that's facing away from the light source will be in shadow. So in these examples I've put the light source to the sides, top right, so like up here. So that's the first step. So we've established the light and shadows and the light and shadow values, so label this as well. The next step is to add half light. That's the next step that I usually take. So half light is basically when an object is still being hit by light, but as the surface starts to move away from the direction of the light source, it will get darker. So for the half light tones, you usually want to use this range, this range of the grayscale, which is why I said before that if you select this shadow value that's too similar to the light, you kind of limit this range. So you want to use this range of the grayscale between the light and the shadow value for your halftones. So you basically want to select your light value and just make it a bit darker, but not too dark that it goes into the shadow values. And you just want to paint darker values on the surfaces of the object that start to face away from the light source. Pretty much like that. I won't go too deep into blending in this video, just because it's a whole another topic in itself. But I'll try and do like a super rough, crappy example of it. So here we have the halftones, pretty much just putting darker values in the light areas where the surfaces start to move away from the direction of the light source. So what I'll do is I'll quickly add like a wall here on this side, and add a floor as well, because why not? Alright, so the next step that you'd want to do is you want to add cast shadows onto objects. I think this is where it starts to bring different elements of a scene together. This is why I've added a wall and a floor, just to give a kind of demonstration of this. So here, this object would cast shadows onto the floor beneath it, like this, and onto part of the wall I've added here as well, on the side of the wall. Didn't really need to add a wall, I just thought it'd make it more interesting. So the light's coming up from here, is hitting this side of the object, it's being blocked, and now it's casting a shadow onto the ground beneath it. So I just add here. Awesome. So I'll do it over here as well. Alright, so I'm just going to move this over to here. Let's start by painting the cast shadows that are on the floor. So that's coming from this angle. I'm actually going to move the ground here up because I think I drew this perspective a little bit differently. Alright, so I'm going to start with the cast shadow on the ground, just like I did over here, in the same way. So I'm just going to draw, or take a guess as to where the shadow would be. When you're doing this kind of stuff, it's usually just all pretty much an educated guess. They don't have to be specifically like 100% accurate. As long as you get the general idea down, it usually works good enough. Now there's a point, in my opinion, where if you start to spend too much time calculating every little detail and trying to make it 100% accurate, you've kind of just wasted a lot of unnecessary time, in my opinion. It's not really necessary to do, so just make a guess. Alright, so with this cylinder here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to extend the cast shadow up onto this box that it's next to, which is why I put them close together, just as a demonstration. Right, so here we've done the cast shadow on the ground. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add a cast shadow, the same as the shadow value, coming up onto this box here. So something like this. Again, just to take a guess, pretty much, as to where you want the shadows to go. You don't have to be 100% accurate. I'm actually gonna move the shadow more to the edge, just because I think it'll look maybe a bit better. So something like that, right? So that's the cast shadows. Two different situations. You can kind of see what I meant before when I said it kind of brings the scene together, because you've got light interacting with two different objects at the same time. The next step I would usually do here would be bounce light. So bounce light is essentially when light hits the surface. For example, this wall here, when the light hits comes from this direction, hits this surface like this. If I can draw a straight line, good enough. There we go. The light will come down, hit this surface, and it will basically just bounce off at the same angle, and it will cast a weaker version of that light onto wherever it hits. So we're basically just painting a weaker light into the shadows. You always want to make sure that when you paint bounce light, that you don't make it lighter than the light values, just because it starts to conflict with everything, and it will start to throw the form of the shape off. So you want to make it just a little bit lighter than the shadow values that you've chosen. It usually varies depending on the scene and the materials of the objects around it. So if this was a mirror, for example, if this was a fully reflective mirror, it would reflect more light, so this bounce light would actually be brighter. What I've done here as well is I've added a bounce light underneath it, just assuming that some of the light's hitting the floor and kind of bouncing upwards. So I'll do the same thing over here. The same thing with these two objects that are interacting with each other. There probably wouldn't actually be a lot of bounce light going on here, but there might be some, let's say here, where the light is kind of hitting this edge of the box, and it's bouncing a little bit of light over to here. Probably not a whole lot, because a lot of this is actually in shadow at this point, but there might be like a tiny bit of bounce light going on here. I haven't put a wall on this side, so you wouldn't get like this bounce light from the wall. So that's bounce light. Again, just trying to remember to keep it separated from the light value. With that, one of the last steps would be to add the ambient occlusion and the occlusion shadows, and this is where I usually save the really dark values for, even going into full black. So here, right, so you want to usually save the occlusion shadows for the areas where, like the really tight spaces where light probably wouldn't reach. It would probably be in these examples, or where the objects are touching the ground. So areas like around here. And again, this is why I'm using I'm using full black here. So the really dark values you want to use for this. Right, so that's your occlusion shadows there. And you kind of want to, what I usually do is I kind of blend them out into ambient occlusion, which is the same concept, it just happens on a wider scale. It's when two surfaces get close to each other, the light starts to get dimmer, so it darkens everything around it. So you're basically just grabbing those occlusion shadows and just kind of blending them out a little bit. But yeah, as far as that goes, I think that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what there is to cover in this video. So to go over things quickly again, we started off with the light and shadow values here and just mapped those out, and then we added halftones in this range of values here, and adding cast shadows onto the surfaces around the object. Finally adding ambient occlusion and occlusion shadows here in the areas where the light would probably struggle to reach. And then if you want, add a highlight. I'll probably go over highlights more in the next video, but just for this video I'll leave them out. But yeah, for this video I think that's pretty much it. Like I said before, there will probably be another part to this video just explaining more in detail some of the different steps that we took here. We'll try and explain more how they work and go in more detail into reflections and stuff. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this video. Again, as I always say, if you liked the video, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions as to what you'd want to see me cover in a future video, then do let me know in the comments. And if you have any questions, then leave them in the comments as well, and I'll try my best to get to answering those. But thanks for watching. As always, take care of yourselves out there, and until the next video, I'll catch you later. Peace.